The rain tapped gently on the glass walls of a modern mansion in the hills of San Diego. Inside, 45-year-old billionaire Jackson Monroe stood in his office, staring at the gray clouds as if they had the answer to his biggest question. Did his family love him, or just his bank account? He had everything. Tech companies, real estate, a private jet, a golf course with his face on the welcome sign. But what he didn't have was peace. His wife, Bianca, only lit up when there were zeros on the check. His 17-year-old daughter, Lola, spent her life chasing TikTok fame and ordering gold-plated milkshakes for her followers. And then there was Tyler, 15, the quiet kid who preferred comic books and ramen noodles over Gucci slides and rooftop brunches. At dinner that evening, Jackson sat silently watching his so-called loved ones. Bianca was scrolling Zillow for mansions in the Bahamas, while Lola giggled into her phone like someone had just told her the secret to staying relevant online. Only Tyler looked up and asked, "Dad, are you okay?" Jackson smiled faintly. "Yeah, bud, just tired." But the truth, he wasn't just tired, he was exhausted. Emotionally bankrupt from fake affection, shallow conversations, and the suffocating feeling of being a human ATM. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, he called his assistant, Miguel. "Shut everything down," Jackson said over the phone. Miguel choked on his chamomile tea. "Sir, everything? Yep, freeze the accounts, suspend the companies, sell the mansion, but transfer the real wealth to a private trust. No one can know I'm still rich." There was a pause. "You're scaring me, sir." Jackson chuckled. "Good, it's a test. Let's see what love looks like when the money runs dry." The next morning at 6 a.m., the family was summoned to the living room. Bianca arrived in silk pajamas and a face mask that cost more than a used car. "Jackson, what fresh nonsense is this? I was exfoliating." Jackson took a deep breath. "I lost everything." Lola gasped. "Like, your password?" "Number everything, business, banks, house, we're broke." Silence. Bianca screamed. "You mean we have to move?" "To my late father's cabin," Jackson replied calmly. "In rural Wyoming." Lola's jaw dropped. "Dad, I have allergies to nature." Bianca laughed sarcastically. "You're joking, right?" Jackson grabbed the car keys. "We leave in an hour." 2 hours and several tantrums later, the family was on the road in a rusty old Honda Civic Miguel had bought for dramatic effect. The once mighty billionaire was now behind the wheel of a car that wheezed every time he hit a bump. Tyler sat in the back seat, holding his dad's hand. "We got this, Dad." Jackson smiled. One ally. That was enough to keep him going. The cabin turned out to be less cabin, more barn that used to be a cabin. It had a tin roof, a door that squeaked like it was haunted, and a bathroom that only existed in theory. Bianca stepped out of the car and blinked like she'd been slapped with a bucket of reality. "Jackson Monroe, you brought me to this. There's dust, there's wind, there's no Wi-Fi." Lola sniffed the air. "It smells like something died here, probably my social life." Only Tyler stayed quiet, dragging the luggage inside and opening windows to let in some air, along with a dozen curious flies. Bianca refused to enter. "I'll sleep in the car," Jackson replied. "The car is out of gas." That night, they all slept on a single mattress under a mosquito net that looked like it had seen better wars. Bianca cursed. Lola cried. Tyler whispered, "It's okay, Dad. We'll make it." And Jackson, he cried a little too. The next morning, a rooster outside the window screamed like it was auditioning for The Voice. Bianca sat up, her eye mask crooked, and shouted, "Why is a bird yelling at me?" Jackson stretched. "Time to start our new life." Lola came out, her wig tilted and her eyes puffy. "I can't do this. I feel poor." Jackson handed her a shovel. She stepped back like it was a weapon. Bianca gasped. "You want me to farm? You want these hands to touch dirt?" "I don't think so." Tyler stepped up and took the shovel. "Let's go, Dad." As Jackson and Tyler walked to the fields, the sun rising behind them like a scene out of a motivational poster, Jackson looked at his son. "You're a good kid, Ty." Tyler shrugged. "You're the only dad I got." Jackson felt tears sting his eyes again, but this time it wasn't from smoke or disappointment. It was from hope. Meanwhile, back at the cabin, Bianca was already plotting. She saw a local man stroll past in a bright robe, gold chains bouncing, his belly leading the way. "The village chief," someone said. Rumor had it he owned 3 goats and a used BMW. Bianca's eyes sparkled. Maybe this place isn't so bad after all. Bianca Monroe had never been the kind of woman who sat around and waited for fate. No, she was fate. At least, that's what she liked to tell herself while fanning, her perfectly sculpted face with a palm leaf, and glaring at the Wyoming sun like it personally offended her. 3 days had passed since the great bankruptcy bombshell, and things had gone from inconvenient to full-on wilderness nightmare. The cabin still smelled like old cheese and regret. There was no skincare routine within a 100-mile radius, and, worst of all, Bianca's last nail broke on a rock while she was trying to swat a fly the size of a toddler. Meanwhile, her daughter Lola had officially entered what she called digital starvation mode. "No TikTok, no Instagram, no Wi-Fi, no life," she groaned, lying dramatically on a log like it was a therapy couch. "I'm fading, Mom, like a Snapchat memory." Bianca wasn't listening. She had spotted Mayor Harlan, the self-proclaimed village chief, waddling across the dusty road again. He wore a bright purple robe with gold chains clinking like he was auditioning for a low-budget rap video. 2 women followed him carrying his groceries, and one was definitely winking at him. Bianca smirked. Target acquired. Later that afternoon, while Jackson and Tyler were out digging up stubborn dirt and talking about planting corn like it was a sacred ritual, Bianca decided it was time for Plan B. B for better husband. She adjusted her thrift store wrapper, dabbed on her last bit of luxury perfume, saved from a sample packet, and strolled casually toward the local lodge where she'd heard Chief Harlan like to lounge in the afternoons. She walked in like a peacock disguised as a humble dove. "Good afternoon, sir," she said, with the softest southern sweetness she could fake. Harlan looked up from his roasted chicken wings and grinned like he'd just struck oil. Well, who do we have here? You're definitely not from around here." Bianca giggled. "Is it that obvious?" Meanwhile, across town, or what counted as town when there were only 4 streets and 1 gas station, Jackson wiped the sweat off his forehead and looked at Tyler. "This is tough," he muttered. Tyler nodded, dirt on his cheeks and a proud smile on his face. "But we're tougher, right?" Jackson chuckled. "You read that on a poster?" "Nope, I read it on your face." Jackson ruffled his son's hair. "You're gonna be all right, kid." Back at the lodge, Bianca was now fully in character, damsel in financial distress. She told Chief Harlan everything, well, her version. "My husband lost everything. I'm trapped in that cabin," she said, as if the word itself tasted bad. "No hot water, no caviar. It's like camping, but permanent." Harlan chuckled. "You deserve better." Bianca leaned in just enough to let the light catch her fake diamonds. "You think so?" "Oh, I know so," he said, handing her a cold malt drink and patting the seat beside him. "A woman like you shouldn't suffer. I can make life easier." Bianca smiled slowly. "Easier sounds wonderful." The next few days were a blur of sneaking around, suspicious bags of groceries, and whispered lies. Bianca began disappearing for hours, coming home with things she couldn't afford: fresh meat, imported soap, and the kind of smug smile that said, "I'm winning." Lola caught on fast. "Mom," she whispered one night, "you got a sugar, Chief?" Bianca grinned. "Shh. Don't judge the game, baby. Learn the playbook." That night, as Jackson sat on the porch with Tyler, sipping warm water and watching the stars, he turned to his son. "You ever feel like people change when the weather does?" Tyler blinked. Are you okay, Dad?" "I mean, when the money dried up, so did everything else. Love, respect, even patience." Tyler sighed. "Maybe they didn't change, Dad. Maybe they were always like that. And now we can finally see it." Jackson stared at his son. "Dang, you sure you're 15? 15 and a half, Tyler corrected, with a proud smirk. They laughed together. For the first time in weeks, Jackson felt like he wasn't completely alone. But peace doesn't last long in small towns. One hot afternoon, as Lola strutted around in a glittery dress she clearly didn't find in the thrift box, she was confronted by a furious woman in an apron and flip-flops. "You!" the woman barked. "You think I wouldn't find out, you little city rat?" Lola blinked. "Excuse me. I'm Mrs. Barnes. The real Mrs. Barnes. You've been seeing my husband behind my back." Lola chewed her gum slowly. "Girl, you should worry more about keeping your man than chasing teenagers." The slap echoed across the village, and just like that, drama exploded. Jackson overheard the commotion. He stepped outside just in time to see his daughter being dragged into a screaming match that could make reality TV producers cry with joy. Later that night, after the dust had settled, he sat on the porch again, alone. Then Tyler came out. "They're really losing it, huh?" Jackson didn't answer. He just stared into the darkness. "I guess now we know who we really are, when everything's gone," he said quietly. The wind in Wyoming had a way of exposing things. Loose shutters, broken fences, and, lately, the cracks in the Monroe family. By the end of the second week, Jackson wasn't just tired. He was heartbroken. His daughter, Lola, had just been publicly shamed by a married woman whose husband she'd been hanging out with under the cover of Sunset and Secrets. His wife, Bianca, meanwhile, had gone full village socialite, visiting Chief Harlan's lodge more often than the kitchen at home. Only Tyler, sweet, grounded Tyler, still stood by his side. Still woke up early to sweep the dusty yard, still helped plant beans in their scraggly garden, still smiled like everything would be okay. And Jackson hated that. Not because it wasn't enough, but because it was too much for a kid who never asked for any of this. One morning, Jackson came outside to find Bianca dressed in her Sunday best at 7 a.m. Bright lipstick, big earrings, and a perfume cloud that could knock out a goat. He leaned on the doorframe. "Early for church, isn't it?" She didn't even look at him. "I have somewhere to be." "Let me guess." "The man with the gold chains and hollow promises." Bianca froze. He smiled sadly. "I'm not blind, Bianca. I see you." She scoffed. "You lost everything, Jackson. What did you expect me to do? Rot in this dusty pit with your dreams?" He stepped closer. "I expected you to stay." She turned, clutching her bag like it was dignity. "You should have known better." That day, Jackson didn't work in the garden. He sat under the old mango tree, staring at the clouds and wondering how love could vanish so fast, like a direct deposit that never hit. Tyler brought him water. "Dad, you okay?" Jackson nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just thinking." "About Mom? About life, kid?" Tyler sat beside him, quiet for a while. Then he said something that shook Jackson to his core. "You know, Maybe Mom and Lola never changed. Maybe we just stopped lying to ourselves. That evening, something snapped. Bianca came back from the lodge, humming and swinging a grocery bag filled with goodies. Jackson watched her from the porch. She dropped the bag and tried to breeze past him, but he stopped her. "Bianca," he said calmly, "I need you to hear this." She rolled her eyes. "Oh, another lecture. Let me guess. Love is what matters. Blah, blah, blah." "No," he replied. "This is different." He reached into his shirt pocket and handed her a folded paper. She opened it. Her eyes widened. A property deed. Not for the cabin, not for some shack, but for a massive estate with her name once on it, now crossed out. "I was never broke," Jackson said. "It was all a test." Bianca laughed, but it didn't sound real. "Cute trick." Jackson's face didn't change. "And you failed. You didn't just walk away from me. You sprinted into the arms of the first man with a fake Rolex and a decent mattress." She blinked, unsure what to say. "You could have had everything," he continued, voice calm. "But you traded a kingdom for breadcrumbs." Meanwhile, back in town, Lola was bragging to a group of teenage boys near the corner shop when a dusty pickup truck pulled up. Out stepped a woman. Mrs. Barnes again. Only this time she wasn't shouting, she was crying. She walked right up to Lola and said, "You win." "He left me." The boys fell silent. Lola blinked. "What?" "He left, took his clothes, moved into a room with you, I guess." She looked down at Lola's shoes. "You're wearing my sandals, the ones I bought last Christmas." Then, without waiting for a response, Mrs. Barnes turned and walked away, quietly. The boys slowly walked off too, and Lola just stood there. For the first time, no sass, no gum, no smirk, only silence. That night, Jackson called Tyler to the porch. "Pack your bag," he said. "We're going home." Tyler looked confused, but "I thought this was the test." "It was," Jackson replied, "but I've seen all I need to see." The next morning, with Bianca and Lola still asleep, Jackson and Tyler slipped away. No big speech, no goodbye notes, no final arguments, just peace. They boarded a bus, rode back to the city, stepped off in front of a mansion twice the size of the one they left behind. When Tyler looked at his dad, eyes wide, Jackson finally smiled like a man who had found himself again. "This," he said, "is home. For the ones who stayed." Back in the village, Bianca and Lola woke up to silence. The house was empty, the air was still, and the future was confusing. Lola stretched and muttered, "Where's Dad?" Bianca looked out the window. She had a feeling, a sinking, unmistakable feeling. And for the first, it wasn't pride. It was regret. 2 weeks had passed since Jackson Monroe and his son Tyler returned to the city. Their new mansion wasn't just a house, it was a statement. Gated entrance, marble floors, a waterfall in the foyer, and a library bigger than the cabin they had left behind. But none of that mattered to Jackson. What mattered was that he'd found the one person in his family who chose him, not the lifestyle. And that person was Tyler. They started fresh. Morning jogs, home-cooked meals. Tyler even convinced Jackson to adopt a dog from the shelter, a scruffy mutt they named Doubt, because we left him behind too. It was peace, but peace doesn't stay hidden forever. One sunny afternoon, while Jackson was reading the newspaper in his garden, a familiar voice echoed from beyond the gate. "Jackson!" It was Akina, the village gossip king, waving a rolled-up paper in one hand and panting like he'd run from Wyoming on foot. The guards hesitated, unsure whether to tase him or give him water. Jackson waved them off. "Let him in." Akina stumbled through the gate, sweat dripping from his forehead. "Sir, Mr. Monroe, you're rich again." Jackson blinked. "I was never poor." Ikenna froze. Wait, what? Jackson folded his paper. It was a loyalty test. The man's eyes widened. Sweet mother of gossip, I knew it. He pulled out his phone and began dialing. Who are you calling? Jackson asked. The entire village. Within 24 hours, the village was in flames. Well, not literally, but emotionally. Chaos. Bianca was sitting under a tree, peeling mangoes and gossiping with other women, when her phone lit up with a message. Your husband is back in the city, big house, cars, he never lost a dime. Ikenna. She read it twice, then again, then out loud. The women gasped. Bianca, is this true? Bianca's lips trembled. Number, it's a lie. He's a security guard. But even she didn't believe it anymore. That evening, Lola barged into the hut, phone in hand. Mom, this video has 2 million views. It was a TikTok clip of Jackson stepping out of his luxury car in a tailored suit, waving at neighbors as the camera zoomed in on the mansion behind him. The caption read, When your fake broke dad turns out to be richer than the mayor. Bianca's heart dropped into her sandals. Lola flopped onto the straw mattress. We played ourselves. Bianca sat down slowly. He warned me. He tried. Lola whispered, What do we do now? Bianca didn't answer, because truthfully, she didn't know. Back in the city, Jackson was in his study with Tyler, going over some architectural plans. You think we should add a greenhouse? Jackson asked. Tyler nodded. Yeah, something quiet, peaceful, something Mom and Lola would hate. They laughed. Then Jackson paused. Do you miss them? Tyler thought for a moment. I miss who I thought they were. 2 days later, the mansion gate buzzed. It was a woman, wrapped in a colorful scarf, sunglasses too big for her face, and a trembling voice that whispered, Please, I just want to talk. It was Bianca. The security guard radioed inside. Sir, she's here. Jackson didn't move from his chair. He closed the book he'd been reading, rubbed his forehead, and said, Let her in. Bianca stepped into the garden like a ghost from the past. Nice roses, she said. They don't complain when there's no Wi-Fi, Jackson replied. Silence. She sighed. I came to say sorry. He didn't look at her. I failed, as a wife, as a mother, as a human being, probably. Jackson finally met her eyes. Why now? She shrugged. Because I realized I traded diamonds for dust. He nodded slowly. And now? I'm not asking to come back, she said softly. I just wanted you to know I see it now, all of it. I was blind. Jackson leaned back. You know, Bianca, you weren't blind. You were comfortable. She looked away. I don't hate you, he added, but I do pity you. Tears welled up in her eyes. I deserve that. Later that night, Tyler sat with his dad under the stars. Do you think she meant it? He asked. Jackson took a long breath. Regret and change aren't the same thing. Tyler nodded. So, what happens now? Jackson smiled faintly. We move forward, with whoever's willing to walk the path with us. Back in the village, Lola stood outside the hut, scrolling through comments on the viral video of her dad. Your dad's a king. Can't believe they left him. Shame on that family. She put down the phone. For the first time, the silence hurt. She whispered to herself, I want to go home. It had been 4 days since Bianca showed up at the mansion and walked away without asking for anything. No second chances, no dramatic breakdown, just a quiet apology and an even quieter goodbye. But that night her words replayed in Jackson's mind like a song he couldn't skip. I traded diamonds for dust. I was comfortable, not blind. I'm not asking to come back. And somehow, that hurt more than the betrayal itself. Meanwhile, Tyler was thriving. He'd made friends at his new school, joined a robotics club, and was teaching the dog how to high-five. Doubt the dog was doing better too. His tail wagged more these days. But even in this new piece, Jackson could feel a shift. One night, as they finished dinner, Tyler cleared his throat. "Dad, what if Mom really meant it?" Jackson didn't look up from his plate. "Meaning something doesn't undo what was done." Tyler nodded. "Yeah, I know, but people change, right?" Jackson sighed. "Sometimes, but not always for the better." Back in the village, Lola had reached her limit. Her viral fame had faded. The boys who once praised her now mocked her. She'd become a cautionary tale. She sat on the porch of the hut, staring at her cracked phone screen. No new notifications, no validation. Just silence. "Mom," she said, "I want to go back." Bianca turned from the small fire where she was cooking. "Back where?" "To Dad, to the city, to anything that isn't this." Bianca didn't respond immediately. She stirred the pot in front of her, cassava again, then whispered, "Do you think we deserve that?" Lola looked at her mother, surprised. "I don't know if we deserve it," she said honestly, "but maybe we can try to earn it." Bianca wiped her hands on her wrapper. "Then we start with truth and humility." The next day, the village was buzzing. Why? Because Bianca and Lola were leaving. They packed what little they had, left behind the gossip, left behind the lodge, left behind the fake promises from Chief Harlan, who, it turned out, was married. Twice. They took the early morning bus, the one with chickens in the aisle, and a driver who believed brakes were optional. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. When they arrived in the city, Bianca hesitated outside the mansion gate. She looked at the guard. "Tell Mr. Monroe his family is here, but not the same one that left." The guard didn't move right away. He studied her, then picked up the radio. Inside, Tyler was playing chess with Jackson when the intercom buzzed. "Sir, there's a woman and a young lady outside. They say they're family." Jackson froze. Tyler looked at him. "You going to answer?" Jackson stood up slowly. "Yeah." They met at the gate. 4 people, divided by months of betrayal and silence. Bianca didn't waste time. "I'm not asking for pity," she began, "or forgiveness. I just came to show you who I really am when money isn't in the room." Lola stepped forward. "I made mistakes, Dad. I hurt people. But I don't want to live that way anymore." Tyler walked toward them, no hesitation. He hugged his sister first, then looked at his mom. "Hi," he said quietly. Bianca covered her mouth, tears flooding her eyes. Jackson stood still, silent, searching. Finally, he said, "I have rules now." Bianca nodded. "We'll follow them." "No lies," he said. "No pretending, no manipulation." "We don't have any of that left," Bianca whispered. "Just the truth and hope." They didn't move in that day. Jackson gave them a modest apartment nearby. He paid the first 3 months. "Not because I owe you," he said, "but because you need a place to heal, not to hide." Bianca took the key with shaking hands. Lola hugged her dad. He didn't hug back right away, but when he did, it felt real. That night, Jackson stood by the window again, like in the beginning. But this time he wasn't wondering if he was loved. He knew who loved him. He had proof. And just maybe, for the rest, a second chapter could still be written. 3 weeks had passed since Bianca and Lola returned to the city. No red carpet, no dramatic reunion montage, just quiet mornings, simple food, and a small apartment with creaky floorboards and a window view of the alley. But in a strange way, it was peaceful. They had something they'd never truly had before: accountability. And in that dusty little apartment, Change was beginning to feel less like a punishment and more like a choice. Every Saturday, Tyler visited them. Sometimes he brought groceries. Sometimes he just brought laughter. And sometimes he brought silence, the kind of silence that meant we're still family, even if it's awkward right now. One day, as he left, Bianca stood in the doorway. "Tell your father thank you for the apartment and for the distance." Tyler raised an eyebrow. "The distance?" She nodded. "Sometimes you don't need a hug. You need space and the time to earn your way back." Across the city, Jackson Monroe was living slower these days. He still attended meetings, still read 3 newspapers every morning, still couldn't figure out how to use TikTok. But there was a gentleness about him now, a softness behind the stern eyes. One morning, while Tyler helped water the new greenhouse, he asked, "Do you miss them?" Jackson didn't answer right away. He adjusted a hose, wiped his hands. "I miss who they're becoming," he said finally. Bianca, on her end, had started working again, not at a boutique, not at some flashy PR firm. No, she took a part-time job at a senior center, folding laundry, serving meals, listening to old folks tell the same stories 3 times, and she loved it. "Mom, you sure you're okay here?" Lola asked once. Bianca smiled. "For the first time in a long time, nobody cares what handbag I carry. They just care if I show up." Lola had her own arc. She deleted her old social media, started a blog instead. No filters, no fake trips, just honest entries titled things like "How I Became the Villain in My Own Story," "Shame Tastes Like Dry Rice," "Why My Dad Deserved Better." They didn't go viral, but one day Tyler sent the blog to Jackson. He read it, slowly, quietly, twice, and said nothing. But that night, for the first time in months, he put 2 plates on the dinner table instead of 1. One Sunday afternoon, Bianca and Lola were walking home when they passed the Monroe mansion. Not on purpose. It was just on the way. Lola stopped. "Do you think we'll ever go inside again?" Bianca didn't answer right away. Then she said, "I don't want to go back to the mansion. I want to go back to him, but only when I can say I've earned it." Just then, the gate buzzed. Tyler's voice came through the speaker. "Hey, Dad says he made too much stew." A pause. "You hungry?" Bianca stared at the speaker like it had grown wings. Lola blinked, then smiled. That evening, the family sat at the same table for the first time in months. It wasn't perfect. Lola spilled juice. Bianca said something awkward. Jackson raised his eyebrow at a joke he didn't get. But nobody walked away, nobody yelled. And for a whole hour they were just human again, flawed, tired, healing, but together. After dinner, as Bianca helped clear the dishes, she looked at Jackson. "Thank you for opening the door," he replied. "It was always unlocked. I just needed to see if you'd knock the right way." They didn't hug, but they didn't need to. Sometimes healing sounds less like "I forgive you" and more like "I saved you a seat. Here's your favorite cup. Don't worry, I washed the blanket." Outside, the sky was dark. But in that house, something new was rising. Not just love, respect, and it would take more time, maybe even a lifetime. But now, they had the one thing they hadn't had in a long time. A real shot. Spring came quietly. No big fanfare, no celebration. Just softer sunlight, gentler mornings, and a subtle peace that slowly made its way into the Monroe household. It had been nearly 4 months since the test, since Jackson Monroe let go of everything to see what would stay. And now, what had stayed was not his wealth, his image, or the applause of a shallow world. What stayed was truth. And truth, though painful at first, had grown into something unshakable. Jackson stood in his greenhouse, trimming basil like a man pruning the past. Across the yard, Tyler was painting a new bench, one of his weekend projects. Every so often, he'd pause, glance at his phone, and smile at a message from Lola. She was different now, not perfect, but real. She'd started volunteering at a youth center, mentoring other girls who once thought clout was currency. Her blog, still small, still raw, still full of truth. But now, Jackson read every post, sometimes twice. As for Bianca, she never asked to move back in. She didn't need to. What she rebuilt with Jackson wasn't based on location. It was based on presence. She came over every Sunday, sometimes for dinner, sometimes just to sit in silence. And sometimes she brought cake. One afternoon, she stood beside Jackson in the kitchen, helping slice vegetables. She didn't speak. But after a while, she asked, "You ever wish none of this happened?" Jackson thought for a second, then shook his head. I wish it had happened sooner. Bianca smiled, not because it was funny, but because it was true. One morning, Jackson gathered his family in the living room, the same one where months earlier he had announced they were broke. This time, though, he was dressed casually. No speeches, no drama, just 3 envelopes. He handed one to Bianca, one to Lola, and one to Tyler. Inside each, a letter. Not about money, not about punishment, but about legacy. You don't inherit wealth from me. You inherit wisdom. You don't inherit land. You inherit lessons. If you choose to walk with me, then what's mine will always be yours. But if you walk ahead, chasing what glitters, you might miss the real gold standing right beside you. Bianca's eyes welled up. Lola covered her mouth. Tyler just nodded. That's how he was, quiet, present, solid. That evening, they all went outside to plant a new tree, a fig tree, something Jackson's father once told him represented balance. Too sweet and you spoil, too bitter and you break, but just right, and you feed the world. As they dug into the soil, Jackson handed Tyler the final seedling. "Go ahead, son. This one's yours." Tyler smiled. "One day, I'll bring my own kids to see this." Jackson smirked. "Just make sure they don't pick the figs before they're ripe." Lola laughed. "You'll turn into the old guy yelling, 'Get off my tree.'" Bianca added, "You're already halfway there." They all laughed. And for the first time, the sound felt complete. As the sun began to set, they sat on the porch. 4 people who had once been broken, now stitched together by something stronger than blood. Choice. The choice to stay. The choice to change. The choice to rebuild. Jackson looked at them and said, "You know, this started as a test," Bianca replied, "and somehow turned into the real thing." Tyler grinned. "The world's weird like that." Lola leaned back, arms behind her head. "We failed the first half, but I think we aced the second." Jackson chuckled. "The test never ends, sweetheart, but at least now we're in it together." And that was enough. No mansion could match it, no money could buy it, no storm could shake it. Because they'd found something richer than wealth. They'd found each other. Finally, honestly and wholly,